Hiya, I'm Terry Gion, and host of VideoFuzzy, back again with this fifth ever installment of VideoFuzzy the Video, part 2 of talking about episode 76, titled Building a Mystery. In this one, part 2, I'll share some thoughts with a book report on Agatha Christie's At Bertram's Hotel. Enjoy! Part of my interest in doing a murder mystery this time was in response to a review I heard recently of one of my very favorite Agatha Christie mystery thrillers. Kemper Donovan and Catherine Brobeck of the All About Agatha podcast, which I've gushed about here on before, have for years now done outstanding, well-researched, thoughtful explorations of, by now, the vast majority of Christie's body of work. I have so consistently delighted in recalling vicariously stories I have loved since I began reading her works as a teen in the mid-'80s. They've been rereading her from her first mystery, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, published now a century ago this year, and as of this writing, they're down to the single digits. I recently heard their take on Hercule Poirot's misadventures in Third Girl from 1966. Anyway, Kemper and Catherine, their words, both of them loved At Bertram's Hotel when they read it years ago. Revisiting it now, as both of them did, distracted as they said they were by significant life disruptions like moving and so forth, they couldn't get into it. In fact, approached the whole thing as some 200 pages of off-the-mark, go-nowhere red herrings leading up to a sad little murder tacked in at the end. They've been ranking her novels as they go best to worst through the run of their project, and they ranked At Bertram's Hotel on par with several titles they actively disparage, including Dumb Witness, featuring evidence from a dog, and Murder on the Blue Train, which features a ghost. I was aghast. See, I'd also remembered loving the book when I first read it, and I thought it was a masterpiece. Really, in my view, one of the best novels she ever wrote, one of the best I'd ever read, mystery or otherwise. I couldn't understand how I could have been so mistaken in my memory of this work, so I pulled out my copy and reread it myself. In At Bertram's Hotel, published in 1965, Christie leans right into her critics, presenting us with a curated collection of defiantly stock characters, almost walking caricatures of themselves, including one Jane Marple, who, more usually ensconced in her tiny village of St. Mary Mead, has been observing the worst of human nature for her entire long life. She's enjoying a holiday at Bertram's, this capital Q quaint London hotel. All is not as it appears to be, however, and she has arrived just in time to witness several small but critical fractures in otherwise seemingly seamless facade. The one, a clergyman, Canon Pennyfather, one of the old dears whose custom Bertram deliberately cultivates, is a scholar of antiquity and ancient languages, but a little too vague on dates and times and his own surroundings, which can absolutely happen when one is 1,000 years old. And he misses his flight to this Dead Sea Scrolls convention, wanders about, takes in a show, and comes back to the hotel where he discovers himself, mirror image, coming out of his own hotel room, and is promptly knocked on the head. And another, a famous race car driver, Ladislas Malinowski, whose showy sports car is parked too close and too often to this hotel and whose environs he is too conspicuous, in part because a girl he likes is staying there, Elvira Blake, the nondescript heiress and daughter of another of his inamorata, the deliciously scandalous Lady Beth Sedgwick, collector of husbands, her own or otherwise, gets herself into all kinds of outrageous scrapes and adventures, certainly out of place at Bertram's, yet here all three of them are. A fourth figure in this coterie, the doorman, Mickey Gorman, joined Bertram's employ maybe a month back or so. He sees Bess and contemplates telling someone that they're probably still married from back when she was young and silly. She tells him they paid him plenty to keep shush about that at the time, and half jokes she'll put a bullet in him to keep him that way. But they're overheard in this all the gin joints and all the world conversation by Miss Marple and also Elvira, who wonders if Mickey's very existence could jeopardize her inheritance. Taking no chances, she gets her hands on Malinowski's pistol and shoots Mickey Gorman on a foggy night, pretending she'd been the target and that he'd leapt in front of the bullet to save her. She, it's true, reported multiple attempts on her life before now, suspecting it had something to do with the great inheritance she was about to come into. Lord rest her dear late millionaire father's soul. On the case is Chief Inspector Davy, great old duffer everyone in the department calls father. He's drawing connections between a lot of seemingly unrelated goings-on, like the Irish mail train robbery, bank heist, insurance fraud, criminal enterprise worth millions of pounds no one has been able to get to the bottom of. But eyewitness accounts of criminal activity all leads hopelessly and yet a little too consistently nowhere. Prominent judges, respected clergymen, pillars of the community seen unmistakably driving slick, showy getaway motor cars from scenes of various crimes, but all of whom absolutely were not involved. When questioned later, they invariably have airtight alibis, their whereabouts corroborated indubitably by the most respectable of hotels in all of London. Good old Bertram's. See, here's the deal. At Bertram's Hotel is not a murder mystery. Bertram's is a criminal enterprise financed by international jewel thieves and staffed by actors as essentially an alibi factory. They all get all kinds of stuffy old fluffies staying there, and then crimes are carried out by people cosplaying as them. Expert getaway drivers dressed as muddle-headed old clergymen grab the loot and run. People on the scene swear they see the fluffies. Police follow up and no, they weren't robbing a train. They were at a conference in Switzerland. Except for Canon Pennyfather, who missed his flight, came back to the hotel at the wrong time, saw too much. They needed to cobble together some kind of car accident storyline in which he was knocked down on the road outside a country house in the middle of nowhere somewhere. See, I've tried to find a place to insert this observation. This will do. The muddle-headed scenes where Canon Pennyfather is coming to at the country house in the middle of nowhere, that struck me as quite in keeping with the British pop culture sensibility of psyops at the time. Like shows like The Prisoner and The Avengers, ne'er-do-well criminal enterprises pursuing eccentric skullduggery in the countryside, or seaside resorts fencing jewels for international smuggling operations. People were all about spies and intrigue and counterculture and Mrs. Peel, and here Christie and quaint old nothings-what-it-seems birdies managed to leverage a bit of that energy, and I thought that she handled it masterfully. Bertram's gets comically stock characters to stay at the place to give it an air of authenticity, carries out its various heists and schemes, launders its ill-gotten gains through, right here, page 11 in my copy, there's racing tracks just up the road, and so many old duffers show up there and win big, and then they've got their American tourists coming and going, taking a contraband and so forth, and questioned through customs. Frankly, it was an ambitious effort, a very complicated story to tell, but rereading the thing, it's taut as a drumhead. There's not an ounce of fat to be trimmed in the whole blessed work. The off-the-mark plot point that they couldn't even figure out how to talk about, the one where a young Elvira convinces her suggestible friend Bridget to run into traffic outside a jeweler's and cause a car accident so that she, Elvira, can steal something to pawn, buy a plane ticket to Ireland, and investigate her mother's potential bigamy and the concomitant security of her own inheritance. That whole scene goes to character. Elvira Blake is a psycho, a young psychopath. She risks the lives of people, her best friend dying in a car accident so as to satisfy her own curiosity. Quick, please, someone tell her about telephones before she commits arson or something. Elvira grew up in boarding schools and guardianships, her too distracted and oh-so-adventurous mother entirely absent. They barely had what you could call a reunion before Bess, under police questioning, confessed to being the brains behind the whole Bertram setup and tried to take the blame for Elvira's murder of Mickey as well before thrilling escape and suicide car crash. Elvira's easily one of the darkest, most malign characters Christie ever wrote, and she wrote Josephine Leonidas and Zach Osborne. Now, we'll never know exactly what Bess was doing at Bertram's. She heard Elvira was going to be there and she wanted to get a glimpse. Certainly she avoided speaking with her directly until the end. But her being there as Bertram's Inc. pulled off essentially the Irish mail train heist opened up all the tiny cracks in the facade. Conspicuous motor cars parked nearby with false license plates eyewitnesses could credibly misremember, driven by Bertram's troupe of cosplayers to throw investigators down dead ends. Exactly the wrong people come together at exactly the wrong time, and Chief Inspector Davy and Miss Marple see right through the illusion. Were there absolutely impossible coincidences? Of course there were, but for God's sake, give the woman the credit she is due for fully realizing an idea for which she laid the groundwork in The Pale Horse just a few years before.
Dark marble employed a gardening metaphor.
It is like when you get ground elder really badly in a border. There's nothing else you can do about it except dig the whole thing up. Just as I'd remembered it to be so very fondly, Bertram's is an elaborate front for an international criminal enterprise. It was corrupt to its core and needed to be taken down. And who did that? Jane Marple. While on holiday. The murder itself was in fact a kind of metaphor for the whole rest of the piece. Mickey Gorman was the very picture of amiable respectability, masking baser corruption within, ultimately destroyed by self-interest and greed.
Not telling anyone how to do their jobs here, but...
Anyway, this has been my book report on Agatha Christie's At Bertram's Hotel. Thanks for stopping by.